we are on the flip side of that coin. We are trying to attract and grow the talent that fuels those businesses. So it is an economic development play. It's about making sure that Memphis is a livable and lovable place that people want to be.
I'm your host, Taylor Ann Carpenter, and welcome to The Talk Chamber, a production of the Greater Memphis Chamber. The Talk Chamber is the podcast for the latest on the Chamber, economic development, and all things Memphis. Our episode today features the Executive Director of New Memphis, Anna Mullins Ellis. Anna, I'm so glad you could stop by and chat.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Let's just jump right in. Anna, take us back. How did your journey start, and what sparked your passion for leading change in Memphis?
Well, I have been in Memphis since I was 16 years old, and always liked Memphis. You know, it was never I hate it here, I got to get out of here kind of person. But after college and graduate school, I certainly thought that my career was going to take me away from this city. But I was fortunate in that my first job, I started my career in journalism. And so my first job gave me an opportunity at the Commercial Appeal to cover what they, I think, would pejoratively call community news. So that was nonprofits, neighborhoods, small businesses, entrepreneurs. But I found it to be just incredibly illuminating, energizing. It really helped me discover the Memphis that I'm constantly championing today, which was because I got to talk to those people who were leading in every corner of this community. And I was just really bowled over by how many brilliant and passionate people are plugging away in the Memphis community every day to make change, to build a brighter future, to care for their communities. So that's what brought me to New Memphis. After a number of years in journalism, I started at New Memphis nearly 11 years ago, which makes me feel as old as the hills. But I started in a communications role. So my job was incredibly fun, and it was to tell stories about Memphis, tell stories that were affirming for our community, to talk to, again, leaders in different sectors to understand what their vision for Memphis was and to help get people plugged into those different projects and organizations. So that continues to be a big part of what New Memphis does today, shaping positive narratives about our city, connecting leaders across the landscape of the Memphis region is paramount to what we're doing day to day. And I am fortunate that I took the role leading the organization in 2019. So I've had a couple years under my belt under this title, but I still feel very fortunate that a big part of my job is getting out into the community to chat with people who are shaping Memphis's future for the better. And that is everything from educators in our classrooms, young professionals, people that are building businesses, all the way up through our C-suite level leaders, through our elected officials. Everybody has a role to play, and that's really where New Memphis leans in.
I love to hear about the stories that we have in Memphis. I think we have such a unique group of people that live here and unique culture where, we've got a lot of really great assets to our community. And I love to see those cultivated and see those thrive.
Yeah, it's, sometimes actually we have a couple of summer interns this year, and I had a one-on-one with one of them earlier this week, and she asked me the question of what do you like about your job? And it's a question I love to answer because I authentically mean I feel like it's a huge privilege to get to hear these stories and to get to support these leaders and empower them and help them achieve the visions, the very ambitious visions that they have for this city.
Yeah, definitely. So you said you joined in 2014 in communications, but then in 2019 you became the executive director?
Yes.
Okay. So what is it about New Memphis and their mission to develop and retain talent that made you say, this is where I want to be, this is where I want to work?
Well, every day is different, and I like that. Again, we run a series of leadership development programs, so that's about half of our work. We are convening people into cohorts, and they're going through experiences together to learn. So even though those programs remain relatively the same year over year, who is in that program every year changes. And they are all, again, brilliant and independently minded, and they have these fresh, innovative ideas for our community. And they're coming from every sector. So we have, people from all of our local companies, all of them chamber members, but also folks from the nonprofit community, from public leadership. And so it makes it continually exciting for me. The other half of our work is what we call community engagement. So that is us convening people to have conversations about what's important for our city. It's convening people to learn more about the city, to build their networks. No day is the same, and I think that it's exciting to get to have that sort of revolving cast of characters.
Definitely. So New Memphis is all about forging a more prosperous Memphis by developing and retaining talent, as well as talking about those community issues that you mentioned and, convening those key players. So your vision is to see Greater Memphis continually transformed and renewed by an inclusive community of developed and connected leaders. Can you break down what that looks like in action? You talked a little bit about your leadership development programs.
Yeah, absolutely. The simplest way, and actually this is apropos to being here with the Chamber today, I always describe them as, if you know what the Chamber of Commerce does, they're trying to attract and grow businesses in a region, support those businesses to thrive. We are on the flip side of that coin. We are trying to attract and grow the talent that fuels those businesses. So it is an economic development play. It's about making sure that Memphis is a livable and lovable place that people want to be. So we look at national data that tells us what makes somebody choose a place. Whether you're 25 and you just finished school, or you're 45 and mid-career, what is it that says, I want to live in a place like Memphis? And once you get here, I feel fulfilled. I feel engaged. I'm going to stay here. Because any of your business leaders will tell you their company is no better than the people who work there. So we believe that we just need more and better leaders in Memphis. So again, what does that look like? We have, as I said, a series of leadership development programs. We tailor those for people at different moments in their career. So we have a program for college students, so those who are still in the middle of their higher education experience, to help them think about how to launch a career, encouraging them to launch a career here in Memphis, getting connected to internships in the community. We have a program for young professionals. Those are people primarily in their 20s, a few years into their career. We know that's a vulnerable demographic, that it's the easiest time in your life to pick up and say, I think I want to try a city like Denver. I think I want to try a city like Nashville. So we want to make sure that before they consider somewhere else, that they are thinking about growing their career here, building a satisfying social network, exploring the assets in Memphis that make this place special. We have a program for mid-career leaders, our fellows program, and then we have a program for senior executives. So I always say, whoever you are, wherever you're at, we have a program that was built for you. Each of those programs are going to give you leadership skills that hopefully you otherwise didn't have. So again, it doesn't matter what sector you're in. We are going to say, we know we want you to be a great leader for this community. We're going to help you develop communication skills, effective collaboration, emotional intelligence, teaching people about inclusion, teaching people about resilience, those things that you can apply in any career. And we want you to take those back to your company, to your organization. So I always say, you come through a New Memphis program, we're going to send you back to your company as a better employee, but we're also along the way going to give you a civic education. So you get to learn about what makes Memphis distinct, where we're coming from, where we want to go, and what role you can play to get us there. The goal for us is to have every professional in Memphis love this place, feel like they have tons of career opportunity, they have the network that they need to thrive, but that they're also not just here living and working, but they are contributing to Memphis's future while they're here.
So I want to stop here for just a second and talk about what it is that attracts people to a city. What makes somebody want to choose Memphis?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's not rocket science. When we look at the data, the drivers of retention are the things that you would assume. It does evolve a little bit as people age. So when we look at demographics, so for example, when we look at what is it that makes somebody who's a college educated professional under the age of 34, I know it sounds like an arbitrary number. We value people over the age of 34 as well. But if you're in that demographic, the data shows you are looking for a place that promises professional opportunity. So, which makes sense. You're like, am I going to have a great career here? Can I continue to grow here? But then things like a satisfying social network, access to great arts, entertainment, culture, access to green space. Those are all, again, when we think about, well, what makes Memphis special? That's why we're talking about the incredible arts assets. We're talking about the amazing investments we've made in public parks and green space. Why we talk about things like the Grizzlies and the Tigers, these things that are fun cultural assets that really help engage a young person. As people get older, some of those things shift. So, for example, affordable housing becomes more interesting for folks as they get later into their 30s and are thinking about purchasing a home. Things like quality public education, general cost of living, so it does fluctuate. But what we try to do at New Memphis is highlight the things that we can authentically celebrate. What is going well here? And that is a long list. And so that's saying, hey, we have a vibrant downtown. We've got, again, these like phenomenal investments in our arts infrastructure. We have some amazing public education options. We have all of these thriving industry sectors. But then we also are clear-eyed and we look at the things that we are not satisfied with. Where can Memphis do better? And we try to support the leaders who are working on those initiatives. So when I say making Memphis livable and lovable, that means we want to support the leaders who are innovating in public education to make our schools better. Those people who are thinking about public safety in unique ways, talking about ways to solve civic problems that are not specific to Memphis, they're not unique to Memphis, but are certainly things that we know we want to grow together in.
Definitely. You just said that Memphis's challenges aren't unique. It's something that lots of cities deal with, but we have special opportunities. So looking ahead, what is your vision for how New Memphis can help shape the 901 over the next decade?
Yeah. I always sort of say humbly, I hope that New Memphis isn't doing the work. We are supporting the great people who do the work. So when I look at our vision for Memphis in the next 10 years, I want to see more leaders engaging with one another, engaging in conversation, supporting one another. So if somebody says, hey, I have this amazing idea on how to engage youth in our neighborhoods, what they need is advocates. They need people in every neighborhood going, that's a great idea. The person in the adjoining neighborhood needs to hear that great idea and replicate it. They need to access resources. They need for the city to embrace them and say, we're so glad you're here, that you're trying to solve these problems. What can we do to help? And I like to think that that's what New Memphis can do. I think that we are, we hear a lot of, terminology like we have momentum, we're on the brink, we have so much potential. And I think all of that is true. But I really do believe, as corny as it sounds, that there is, I actually, I studied literature in college, and I love, this terminology in like fiction writing around like the epiphany moment. Like, what is that moment when a character, your protagonist goes, aha, and there's this sort of turn. And I really do feel like we are at our epiphany moment in Memphis. And I think the next 10 years will be fascinating because we have so many people who have the energy and the commitment right now. And I say this authentically, not every city has people in every sector who care as deeply as our leaders do. And I think the chamber, to me, is a fantastic example of you do not have business leaders in other cities who care about Memphis the way that ours do. And the fact that there is a galvanizing factor that the chamber leads this initiative to say these business leaders care so much about this city that they are ideating for the city's future. They're not just sitting and thinking about their company's strategic plan and what do we need for our company to thrive. They are thinking about their success being tethered to the community that they live in and work in. And I think that is truly distinct. And to have that level of commitment matched by, again, people in public leadership, our elected officials, people serving in both our city and county government, to have that matched by nonprofit leaders, community leaders, that to me is the magic sauce. And I really do think that if we're able to harness that and make sure that everybody feels connected and part of the same vision, and we're all rowing the boat in the same direction, that the next 10 years will be a transformative decade.
So Let me ask, why do you think it is that people don't feel connected to a city or connected to the community?
I think the world's changing a lot. And even just in the last 5 years in the wake of COVID, the idea of connectivity has changed. And maybe that literally means like, are you in your house or not in your house? But the theories of community, I mean, we did not create them at New Memphis, but just this idea that like you have to know your neighbors, and your neighbors doesn't have to be your literal neighbors, but I think the barriers to connectivity are people are busy, and there are more ways to engage in the digital space than there ever has been before. And trying to find that balance between how do you get out into your community to enjoy those assets that I was describing, but also to just physically meet and see people, to understand the landscape of the city that you're living in, to appreciate those things, I think is, a challenge. And for us, it's about in-person interaction is core to what we do. All of our programs take place in person because we know that magic happens when people get together in a room and talk and share ideas and challenge one another. But also, again, connecting to your community means physically being in it. So, we try to encourage people to go explore those things about this city that they can personally enjoy. It's interesting in our work. Many people that we interact with are longtime Memphians, have been here their whole lives, or perhaps like you, they were away for a while and are returnees. But we also work with people who are fresh to town, that are new to Memphis. They came here for work or with their family, and we try to intercept those people quickly. And the theory was, well, we need to make sure that we're getting them quickly engaged and helping them find their communities here, which is absolutely the case, and that's work that we do. But I find that more often than not, in a program, if you have 10 people in the room who are new to town, they are a positive influence on the people who've been here a long time. Because when you're in a community, I've lived here for over 20 years. So you start to, your eyes dull a little to the magic of Shelby Farms, seeing a show at the Orpheum, walking, the Main Street Mall. But when people are come to town for the first time and are like, hey, it's amazing that Memphis has this and that and this, and have you been to this restaurant, and can you believe this amazing festival that happens? And then the people who've been here for a long time go, yeah, like I'm seeing my city through fresh eyes now. And so I think some of the like community engagement, how do you get out and engage with your community, is just a matter of challenging yourself to, I'm saying this to myself, challenging myself not to be lazy and be like, no, I am going to go out to the Shell tonight. Because once you're there, the kind of energy that comes from that, I think, is what really feeds people's love of their city.
I agree. I've had, native Memphians ask, why do people come and tour Memphis? Why do we have people who travel here? And it's that dull eyes, those people who have lived here for so long that they are noticing all the warts and all the blemishes. But these people who come into town, whether that's as a tourist or here, for a job, more permanent, they're seeing it with those fresh eyes. They're seeing all the beauty and all the great things that we have. And that's just something that I think every Memphian, regardless of how long you've been here, needs to remember, is to view the city with fresh eyes every day. And to actively...
It is about going out and enjoying your community, but I think there should be an onus on a citizen of a place to understand what's happening in their community. And, one of the priorities at New Memphis is to connect people to the people, projects, and organizations that are moving the city forward, because it does energize people when you hear about it, but it also hopefully inspires you to be an advocate, to get involved. When you hear about it, something that is important to you, you're like, what can I do to help? And I think that is as important as going out and enjoying the arts and sports and all the great things that we know and love Memphis for.
You guys have said that people who have a connection to their city are not only more likely to stay, but they're more likely to make a difference. And I just think that's right there is a reflection of that idea.
Yeah, it's a win-win for our community. And I will say to the Chamber's audience of primarily companies and business leaders, so often people engage through their community through their employer. And it is a win-win for a company to try to get their employees to engage in community because, as you said, it makes it more likely that they're going to stay. The data shows it also makes them more satisfied employees. So people, when they think about a great place to work, it is a workplace that prioritizes their engagement in their community. So for us, we often work through companies to connect with their individual talent, to make sure that we're connecting them to serve on nonprofit boards, to help them connect with our programs, build their personal networks, again, find ways to share positive narratives about our city, because it's a win for Memphis, it's a win for the individual, and at the end of the day, it's the win for the company.
Agreed. Definitely agreed. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about Meanwhile in Memphis. This is your podcast, what I like to call your love letter to the 901. You spotlight so many folks who make a difference, so many people who, really care about the city and are passionate about it. You've talked about so many different topics. I know, you recently had John Carroll with Choose 901 on, which we also recently had him here to talk.
Great.
It was awesome. And then I know you've done specific episodes on economic development. You've brought people in for legislative updates. Like, this podcast truly talks about Memphis, and you see all sides of it. So my question is, how does your podcast amplify the stories of the innovators and the people who are driving the economic and workforce development in Memphis?
Yeah, hopefully in very powerful ways. So it's a weekly podcast. We actually, like so many podcasts, was a pandemic project, 2020, when they launched the WYXR radio station, which is a project of the Daily Memphian and Crosstown Arts. Excellent public radio station. Please check it out. They were looking for content. So we program that on every Tuesday morning. If you want to listen on the radio, you can. But we said, while we're creating this content, we should put it into a podcast. And for us, it's been transformational, because what it does is it takes the conversations that we're having every day at New Memphis, oftentimes in a small room with 30 people, or even a bigger room with 300 people to luncheon, and it opens that conversation up to thousands of people. So again, we are fortunate to have access to, I think, some of the best and brightest leaders in our community. We get to sit down and say, what is, for example, we're going to have an event next month in September focused on the future of the Memphis Medical District. It's been 10 years since they launched the Medical District Collaborative, talking to these anchor partners. So the CEOs of Alsac St. Jude, Methodist, Le Bonheur, and Regional One Health are going to have a conversation with one another about developments in the district. How do we build a workforce, et cetera? I'm very excited about this conversation, right? But it will be a room of a few hundred people. And if you're one of the lucky ones there, I can't wait to see you there. But we're going to capture that on the podcast. And what that means is we get to spread that to our thousands of New Memphis alumni, but also all of our company partners, anyone at the chamber. And I think what's really powerful about it is, as I was saying, creating these positive narratives is so important, but as important is being able to share them. So if I sit in a room with you and you tell me 10 great things about Memphis, I want to make sure that it's easy for me to then go replicate that and share those messages. So truly, with just the click of a, subscribe, follow this podcast, you can tell all of your employees, all of, the people in your network, hey, here's a great platform of consistently affirming messages about this city. We have an amazing team who program that podcast every week. And it is, really conversations across all of the sectors that we engage with. We also have explored now some partnerships with partners who don't have a podcast, but so, for example, Mayor Harris of Shelby County wanted to convene some conversations, so he will come in as a guest host sometimes, and he will help build conversations. We're doing a similar partnership with the Downtown Memphis Commission, so it's just a great platform for us. It's really allowed us to lean into that connectivity, and if you're listening to this podcast, I assume you are a fan of podcasts and you care about Memphis, so I hope you will check out Meanwhile in Memphis.
Yes. So that makes me curious. Is there a specific moment or conversation that you've had on the podcast that really sticks out to you, or that you'd like to share one more time to a different audience, perhaps?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. So many, so many. I just shouted this out, but I do. Mayor Harris it's really interesting because almost all of the time the leaders that we have on our podcast are all local. But what he is doing is bringing in some national guests to talk about issues that are specific to Memphis and Shelby County. And I think I've gotten to listen into the first two in the series. But I think sometimes we forget how there are lessons to be learned outside of this market, and to have thought partners who are leading in different cities say, this is what we've tried, this is what we're doing. This is I think is really meaningful, and something that Memphians, I think, can really get a lot out of.
Thank you. That's awesome. I'll be sure to.
It's fantastic. And,
that.
I mean, you have to assume, obviously, that a public leader is great at, speaking and he's a great orator, but he does such a good job of preparing for these podcasts and asking thoughtful questions. And it gives our team a break for a day, which is lovely.
So I want to move in and talk a little bit more about leadership, and about more specifically. So your work at New Memphis deals a lot with developing these leaders. In your opinion, what makes a good leader?
I don't have a monolith, and I think, one of the things that I've learned at New Memphis is it takes all kinds, and we need lots of different kinds of leaders in the city. But what we teach at New Memphis is great leaders are great listeners, people who want to learn, who want to explore other people's ideas in addition to their own. So a lot of content around, again, not just how to be inclusive, but how to explore effective communication, how to talk about collaboration. What does that look like in practice? And then I think the other core tenet that you will see a through line throughout all of our programs is people who can articulate their vision, their value, what they want to see. We do a lot of that for our younger leaders because, again, they're often at a time in their career where they're having to pitch themselves and think about how do I talk about myself in an affirming way. It's just it's sort of an uncomfortable thing to do. But it's so important, and increasingly, as leaders even of older ages with a little more seasoning on them, just helping them understand the importance of being able to present their work and their ideas in a thoughtful and succinct way is, I think, key. And then, I think just having a passion for other people, caring about, when we say leader, we often talk about leading an organization or a project, but all that means is you're leading people. Whether you have 100 direct reports or none, you are leading people. You're trying to motivate and influence people to do something and to act a certain way and to achieve a certain goal. And when I think about the most effective leaders in Memphis, they're the people who can kind of humbly come in and say, this is what we want to see for Memphis, and now I've got to get these many thousands of people behind this vision and working towards it.
Yeah, so could you just expand a little bit more on New Memphis's approach to developing leaders?
Yeah. As I said, we try to design our programs for moments that you're at in your career. So not all of the programs are the same. So again, when we look at what a young professional, for example, needs to thrive and grow, it's designed for that kind of moment in your life. But so all of our programs are a series of classes. We work with people typically in groups of about 30 to 40. The idea is that you're also going to meet 30 people you otherwise wouldn't have met, and you're going to grow and learn with them, alongside them. And each class is themed. So for our Embark program, for example, it's about 3.5 months. We have 8 sessions over the course of that time. And so for an evening, they might be learning specifically about communication or diversity, equity, and inclusion. What I think is distinct about New Memphis's work is every one of our programs starts with self-learning. So we do oftentimes a battery of assessments. So I want you to come in before the program begins with information about yourself. So those might be like your Myers-Briggs type, your conflict styles. Many times we have them do 360 evaluations, so they have information from their teams about how they're showing up at work. And the reason we start with that is hopefully your journey through a New Memphis program starts with who am I, what am I great at, where can I grow? And then the classes after that hopefully help guide you into what that looks like. But it's fascinating to watch people learn about themselves. So the programs, again, it's cohort based. Each of them are different lengths. So our fellows program is 9 months, Embark, as I said, 3 to 4. Our work with college students runs over the spring or the fall semester. You can go to newmemphis.org. There are sample class schedules, curriculums, if you want to get a sense of what each of those classes look like. But they all culminate with a graduation at the end where they kind of reflect on what they've learned. And then they also set intention for what they hope to do for their community moving forward.
That's great. I was actually just about to ask you, what happens next? What do they do after? And setting those intentions is obviously the first step to continuing to A, develop yourself as a leader, but B, make a difference in the community.
Yes, and we have, because New Memphis has been around for a number of decades now, we have thousands of graduates. So our executive program, for example, has been around for almost 30 years. So we have, this accumulation of people who are New Memphis alums. And what we try to do as an organization is continue to direct them towards ways to engage in their community, to give back to their community. That's not all work that we do. Oftentimes that means we're directing them to support other nonprofits, to get involved with other organizations. But we're sometimes the vector through which they connect with that stuff. We specifically at New Memphis connect our alumni to serve on nonprofit boards. We believe, every nonprofit needs great leaders on their board. We try to connect them to boards that have a specific need for their skill set. So if you are a marketing communications professional, we would find you you would say, I'm really passionate about youth engagement or our public parks or animal welfare. And we would say, great, we're going to find a nonprofit that has a mission that meets your particular interest, but also that needs your particular skill set. So it's much more than just go serve on a board. We're trying to make connections that are tailored. And then we also have a program that connects professionals to serve as pro bono consultants for nonprofits. So if you're not interested in being a long-term board member, but everybody has a specific skill set, all the professionals that we work with. So we often deploy professionals to do temporary projects. They're capacity building projects for a nonprofit. So that might be, hey, I'm a CPA. I've been in accounting for the last 15 years. I'm interested in supporting a nonprofit. We would connect them to a project that might build some financial capacity for a nonprofit, or budgeting strategy, that sort of thing. So both of those programs, you can, whether you're a New Memphis alum or not, feel free to access via newmemphis.org. But those are some of the ways that when you finish a New Memphis program, we kind of continue, aside from all of the networking and fun engagements and luncheons where we want you to come back and learn alongside us. We do try to put you to work in the community.
Very cool. Very cool. I want to talk a little bit about leadership and what that means for economic development and workforce development. How is New Memphis tackling challenges that we are facing, such as, economic gaps or workforce hurdles? How is New Memphis tackling these and building a more inclusive talent pipeline?
Excellent question. Increasingly interesting to us. We work, as I said, I'm sure multiple times now, with professionals across sectors, but we pay very close attention to the workforce gaps or opportunities that are identified by the chamber. So when y'all see us, or when you guys are excitedly announcing, okay, we're recruiting this company to Memphis, what kind of talent do they need? We try to prioritize that talent as we think about engaging them in our work. I think this is particularly interesting at the college and young professional level. So I think recruiting talent to Memphis is important, but not at the risk of neglecting the talent that we already have here. I think it surprises people sometimes to hear that there are more than 22,000 full-time four-year college students in Memphis today. And what would happen to our talent pool if we were able to help each of those students persist to graduation and access a professional level job in this city? I promise you it's much easier to retain that talent here than to go get 20,000 people from different markets to relocate here. Again, we need to be able to do both, but I think that is really where we're trying to get strategic. And I know the chamber has been really thoughtful in this as it's engaging with higher ed and other workforce training programs to make sure we're going back in the pipeline and telling young people, these are the jobs that you are going to be able to access in 4 years and 5 years and 6 years. These are the skill sets that you need. These are the credentials. These are the programs that are here to support you in many cases at no cost. And how do we leverage that? So at New Memphis, we are trying to prioritize, for example, students who are first-generation college students on need-based financial aid, because we know they often have a deficit of social capital. So what that means is when they're a college sophomore or junior, we want to make sure that they are getting an internship, a paid internship at a Memphis company, because that is the strongest indicator of where somebody launches their career. You can live in Philadelphia and be going to college, but do all of your internships in New York or LA or Atlanta. And wherever you do your internship, that is the likely place where you will launch your career, which makes all the sense in the world. It's where you're building your professional network. So my call to chamber members and all employers in the city is, even if you're not regularly hiring entry-level talent, having college interns or graduate student interns can be a huge boon to the overall workforce development strategies that we're working on. It brings young people into a workplace. It helps them build networks here. And then again, when they graduate from college and they have that degree, they're not picking up and taking it to another market. They're finding that work here. But yeah, beyond that, we work again specifically with companies to say, send us your talent that you need most. So when we work with a company leader, they often are nominating people for our programs. They're sending specific talent through, and we tell them, earmark the people who you need. We work with people in the education sector as well. And when you're talking to a school leader or a principal, they are very savvy at this, because obviously teacher retention is a challenge in every city. But they're really savvy when they say, we really struggle to have high school math teachers or male teachers, whatever those particular areas are, and they always prioritize those educators for our program. So I would encourage companies, as they're thinking about, we're really struggling with accountants. We just can't get enough. We can't recruit enough. Once you have them, send them to New Memphis, because what we're going to do is help make it more likely that they're retained here in Memphis, that they're satisfied in their job, and they're thriving in their career.
What does leadership do for the talent pipeline?
I think, when I think about the talent pipeline, everybody at every moment in their career needs to feel a sense of growth. I think we've all experienced that personally. We see that in the workplaces that we're at, whether you're, on deck for a promotion or you've still got many years to trudge away before you get there. I think giving people this sense of consistent growth, continuous improvement is vital. And so when I think about the talent pipeline, thinking about people's individual leadership and how satisfying it can be for them to stretch those muscles and lead in different ways can be a strong driver of retention for an individual employer.
Definitely. Thank you. I have one last question before we wrap up.
Absolutely.
It's 2 parts. And
it's cheating.
I'm sorry.
I'll allow it.
I feel like both parts are equally important. So why do you devote time, money, resources, and your career even into Memphis, and why should others do the same?
I love it here. But also my family's here. I do think that Memphis is special. I think that, but even if you don't believe that, even if you think Memphis is equal to or about the same as Cincinnati or Dayton, whatever, I think that I feel a strong sense of you should try to leave a community better than you found it. So I feel Memphis has given me a lot. I've had an amazing career here. Again, family, friends, just everyone I love in some way was built by Memphis, has gotten to be influenced and shaped by this community. So I do feel like I owe it. And I also see a ton of opportunity here. I wouldn't have stayed if I was just trudging away. And, this is a community that values you. This is a city, I can't believe the things I've been allowed to do, and the people who've supported me and said, okay, let's do it. And whether that's they're writing a check to New Memphis or they're, coaching me, giving me thought partnership, opening doors for me, making connections. It's just a city that is not just happy to do it, but excited to do it. So to the second part of your question, to me, that's why. This is a city where you matter. This is a city where you can get a lot done. And it's also a beautiful place with beautiful people.
Anna, thank you so much for joining me.
This was so fun. Thank you so much for having me.
It was. We really appreciate you and the work that you're doing for our city. So we are just so glad that you could take some time to chat with me.
Well, we are incredibly grateful for everything that the Chamber does. Keep up the good work.
Thanks. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Talk Chamber. We are so glad you're here. To quickly recap what we heard from Anna today, New Memphis is out here doing great work for our city. They are building leaders from college to deep into their careers. We need our leaders to make our city greater. If you enjoyed this episode or learned a valuable piece of information, share this episode with a friend or a few. Subscribe to the Talk Chamber to keep up on the latest with the Chamber, economic development, and all things Memphis. Follow us on social media at Memphis Chamber, and we'll see you next time.